Okay, so this talk is going to be a bit longer. I drew some pretty pictures here. Celeste had found this really old book that she was going to repurpose. It's a book of dates, and I thought maybe I should look for clues concerning astronomy, the history of astronomy, history of a lot of things. That book is 117 years old. It was printed out in 1903. Front cover fell off. Lots of good information here, long before our modern age, if you will. So, as things actually were, I can see them unaltered with the lens of modernity, like today's perspective. But yeah, Celeste, great find. Thank you for sending me that. Today is Locards exchange principle and stellar metamorphosis. Now, the reason why I wanted to grab that book is because if you want to really study the history of astronomy and astrophysics to get to the bottom of why and how they got into this mess, you can look at it as sort of being from a detective standpoint. When astrophysics first started, they had extremely limited data, on top of the fact that they had false knowledge. They assumed there were such different objects as planet and star. What I mean is they tried to determine the complete evolutionary history of objects that had spectrums only. When Bunsen and his colleague, I can't remember his name, had discovered that you could put a flame against elements and then put that light through a thin slit or a pinhole, and then put a prism from that light and then separate that light into a spectrum. They were like, wow, we can do this. Let's go ahead and apply this to stars to figure out what their chemical makeup is. And of course that technology got more and more advanced. But that happened in 1861, far before the fusion model of stars was invented. And unfortunately, at the same time that they kept that main assumption that there was a difference between star and planet, it didn't help with the fact that the luminosities had reinforced that assumption. They didn't realize that the oldest stars no longer shine. The older stars didn't have strong visible spectrums. The oldest stars couldn't be studied. As well, the oldest stars had the label planet. So there were multiple things that led to this huge issue that we're correcting today. And to correct it, we need to think like a detective. That's why I thought of Locards principle. For those who are new to this theory, these are the stars with the spectrums, and then obviously back in the day, they couldn't see these. They didn't know that the older stars were mislabeled planets. But I'm saying this because a lot of ridiculers and doubters and all this stuff, they say, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Well, it isn't a matter of evidence. The evidence is all around us. We're made of the evidence. It's a matter of interpretation of the evidence, and it's a matter of understanding what it is you're looking at. It says here, and of course, I'll go ahead and link this to the bottom. I wrote this in March 23rd, 2019. The single greatest contribution to the theory of detection in criminology was provided by Edmund Locard as his exchange principle. It is the notion that the perpetrator, nature or animal, always leaves some physical evidence at the crime scene or event and simultaneously takes some evidence away. So, long story short, if you're a bad dude and you rob somebody's house and you go into the house, you take the stuff out and you remove it from the house and then you think you got away with it, but what you left in its place are your tire tracks and or your muddy boot prints inside the house, or fibers from your body, or fingerprints on the door handles or the windows that you broke into, that kind of stuff. So even though you think you're getting away with something, you leave something behind. There's always an exchange of material. And thinking of the stars in that light is what I did with this paper. And it's very simple, really. Hydrogen gas, and I'll go ahead and read this out to you. Let's see. The velocity of hydrogen gas at temperatures above 120 Kelvin, which is really cold, is high enough to escape Earth's gravitational pull. Yet hydrogen exists in large quantities on the Earth, combined with other elements taking the form of molecules such as water, various rocks and minerals. It composes plant and animal life and is even buried deep in the interior of the Earth, combined with carbon in the form of oil and natural gas as the hydrocarbon chains. This being said, if the Earth was hot when it was forming, around the same heat as liquid rocks, or about 1000 Kelvin, then the hydrogen would have escaped Earth's gravitational pull very easily and never combined into molecules in any large amount. Hydrogen is very light and has a high velocity even at low temperatures, so it would not have been pulled in by Earth's tiny gravity. And here's my pretty picture portion. Okay. Hydrogen, a large star can trap hydrogen, okay? Its gravitational field is huge. Hydrogen can't escape, but it does if it's really, really high energy, as the sun is doing with the solar wind. And as the star evolves, that hydrogen does escape because the gravitational pull is less and less and less, so it's a feedback loop. The more hydrogen it loses, the more mass it loses, the weaker its gravitational pull gets, the more hydrogen it loses, and on and on and on. It's a feedback loop. That's why the oldest stars have a lot less hydrogen than the youngest stars. They're really big, massive ones. Which means if you're to have a gas cloud like what the astronomers are claiming, just self-assemble into something the size of the Earth, there shouldn't be any hydrogen there, because the hydrogen wouldn't be able to be pulled in by the Earth as its current size. It's not, the gravitational field isn't strong enough. So why is there hydrogen here? The Earth's gravitational pull is not strong enough. It couldn't have held on to any of the hydrogen. Not only that, but why is there hydrogen combined with oxygen in the form of water? Why is hydrogen combined with carbon in the form of hydrocarbons, oil, natural gas? Why is there all this hydrogen here? If the Earth formed from a gas cloud, why are there even molecules? Why isn't the hydrogen in its pure form? Why is it always found combined with other molecules? You see, that's the problem. It couldn't have formed. The Earth couldn't have formed at its current size. It had to have been something a hell of a lot more massive. Therefore, it had to have had a larger gravitational field, which means when the Earth was very young and it had all its hydrogen, it could hold on to that hydrogen. And over time, that hydrogen escaped, and the hydrogen that combined with the oxygen gas, with the carbon, that stayed put because those hydrocarbons in that water was heavier than the hydrogen gas by itself. So naturally, that's why we find hydrogen combined with carbon deep in the interior of the crust. And that's why we find water oceans, is because when the Earth was very young, it was a huge gas giant that was chemically combining the hydrogen it had with the other elements, making molecules. And those molecules are heavier, so they sunk into the interior and got trapped by the crust, and or in water's case, it has hydrogen bonds. So you have the H2O, the two hydrogens combined with the oxygen, and you have the hydrogen bonds, which means water behaves really weird. It has those hydrogens combined with those hydrogens. That's why even though water is a lot lighter in its vapor versus oxygen and nitrogen gas, it's a lot heavier, or it can stay as a liquid form, even though the temperatures would make other diatomic molecules or triatomic molecules like a vapor. But no more. I don't want to talk about that more. But anyways, what I'm saying is the evidence, the direct observational evidence of Earth had been much more massive in its early history is in the water that's in the oceans. The oceans are direct evidence. The oil we pull out of the ground, everything that has hydrogen here is direct observational evidence that the Earth was a hell of a lot more massive when it formed. Otherwise, that hydrogen wouldn't even be here. Anyways, I'll go ahead and link this paper, Locards' exchange principle. Basically, what he was mentioning is that only human failure to find the evidence, study, and understand it can diminish its value. The evidence cannot be wrong, okay? It's the fact that astronomers, they're not looking for evidence to support their theory because they don't have a theory that can actually explain it. Therefore, they're not noticing that the evidence is all around them, you see? It's not that the evidence isn't there. It's they can't interpret it in a correct light because they don't have a correct theory. And I hate to name drop here, but I think it was Albert Einstein that said that. He said, the theory determines what you can see. If you don't have a good theory, then you're not going to be able to see the evidence that's all around you. And that's the problem with astronomers and astrophysicists today, is that they don't have the correct theories, therefore they don't know what they're doing. I mean, they're good at computer programming and finding these objects, but interpreting how they formed and what they actually are, you can forget about it. And another good quote here says, whoever creates a deception simultaneously creates all the clues needed for its solution. Moreover, every deception necessarily generates a minimum of 2 clues, at least one about the real thing being hidden, and at least one about the false thing being shown. But that's Barton Whaley. He was the guy that wrote the counter-deception book that I've been reading a lot. But anyways, I think I made this video way long enough. All right, y'all. Take it easy.